I see many friends greeting you, Marianne and Tosi, from around the world. I see Indonesia, I see a number of other countries, so many friends and many colleagues that you have not seen in person for a while, and I think that are quite excited to have the opportunity to interact. My suggestion is that we start with slow introduction. So again, I'm Andre Marcoux. I am the director of the Roundtable on Climate Change and Sustainable Transition. We are a Brussels-based think tank, which is focusing exclusively on European and global climate change policy. From our point of view, I mean, at the global level, we are very much involved in issues around Article 6 and response measure. These are the two things that more precisely, I mean, it's a very broad agenda, but these are the two things that we have been directly involved over the years. Michael, maybe you want to just introduce yourself very quickly?
Sure, pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Michael Mehling. I work with Andre on a number of activities, including on the board of ERCSD. My day job is with MIT Center for Energy and Environmental Policy Research.
Very well. So welcome to Marianne and Tosi, our distinguished chairs of respective SBI and SBSTA. We are happy again, I repeat, that you took the time. It's been a challenging year. I have been involved. I'm not sure that it's a good thing or I'm overstaying my welcome, but I've been involved in every COP except the first COP in the Berlin mandate. This is the first time I see something like this. It's a very new experience to all of us. It's an important process. It's a process that is obviously becoming critical as the science tell us that we need to act very rapidly. Unfortunately, due to the circumstances around the health crisis, we have not been able to hold the sessions, and as such, the agenda has not been fulfilled by the effort and the continuous work of the subsidiary body that Marianne and Tosi are heading. Continues, and they will now kind of come in. And what I will ask them to start by telling us a little bit about, for those of you that are not totally familiar with the responsibilities and the agenda or the files in the agenda of each of these two bodies, just very quickly brief us to have a common understanding. And then what we'll do is we will have a conversation between Mike and myself on the things that we see as interesting things for discussions. And after a while, what we'll ask you to do is to raise your hand. You will see at the bottom of your hand, bottom of your screen, a raise hand sign. So raise your hand. We prefer that people actually ask the question in person. It is as good as it gets in the circumstances that we are right now. It is not in person, but it's as good as it gets in the circumstances right now. We'd like to have a live conversation. And when we do that, I will ask you kindly to try and keep the preamble as short as possible and it be very to the point. So Marianne, again, welcome. You chaired the SBI. You're a distinguished negotiator, have had many files under your belt over the years. We've known each other for many years. If you want to give a little bit of background to our audience about the role that SBI plays, what exactly are the files under the remit of the SBI and the subsidiary body and so on.
Thank you very much, Andre, and thank you very much for welcoming me so diligently, and also thank you for inviting me to this event. I think this is an excellent opportunity to meet people across the world that work with climate and environment related issues, and not necessarily closely associated with the UNCCC, but still an important opportunity to reach out. So thank you very much for this opportunity. Now, I am the chair of the subsidiary body for implementation, and the UNCCC consists of many avenues and many agendas for negotiations, but also for a lot of practical work. And the subsidiary bodies, they meet twice a year, and we report to the Conference of the Parties, which is the decision-making meetings that take place under the convention every year. And a lot of the practical work, a lot of the preparatory work for decisions, and a lot of the recommendation that the UNCCC make and the guidance that the UNCCC make to parties, a lot of the support functions that the UNCCC have towards parties, they are embedded in the subsidiary bodies. The subsidiary body for implementation has a key function in supporting parties in implementing their obligations under the convention, under the Kyoto Protocol, but also under the Paris Agreement. Many of these things that we deal with under the SBI has been there for many years. For example, the reporting under the convention, the national communication, the biennial reports, they are reported through the subsidiary body for implementation. And the body is also responsible for a number of issues related to support to parties, for example, capacity building, technology support, some finance, but a lot of the finance support is directly under the Conference of the Parties and do not go through the subsidiary bodies. I have responsibility for the UNCCC budget, which is negotiated every second year. And this is 2021, so this is the year for negotiating the budget for 2022 and 23, so important. You may have been acquainted with the facility of sharing of view and MAs, where countries share their experiences in climate work, and these are also conducted under the SBI. And also, I share with Tosi a number of issues, which is what we call joint items. So number of the constituted bodies within adaptation, loss and damage, response measures, and there's several others that report jointly, items that report jointly to Tosi and I. And we have had a busy year in 2020, and we will have an even more busy year in 2021. Now, Andre, you want me to go into the experiences from 2020 and also looking ahead for 2021 now, or should I give the floor to Tosi for his introduction?
Maybe we get Tosi to make Michael. What did you?
Yeah.
Excellent.
No, I think that it's probably a good sequence, Marianne. I think it's really helpful, although it's clear from the chat that a large number of participants know you both very well and are familiar with the work. There are probably some to whom the acronyms are still a mystery. So Tosi, if you could maybe also give a little bit of a sense of your role chairing SBSTA and the activities of SBSTA before we then launch into the more substantive part of the conversation, that would be much appreciated.
Yes, thank you very much, Michael, and it's a pleasure to attend this meeting and really be among friends, because Andre has been conducted this informal process of holding conversations in order to help parties and other stakeholders to be brought closer towards solutions that can benefit all of us.
Ah.
I actually remember that was the informal, which I attended, was the informal Article 6 meeting that Andre organized last year in London in late February. So I really think that these type of meetings are very useful in nurturing a sense of common purpose and main objective to reach a resolution. I think Marianne explained quite well the role of the subsidiary bodies, which are the two permanent bodies supporting parties under the helm of the UN Climate Convention. We do play different roles. We are very active usually in the middle of the year when we hold the SB sessions, usually in Bonn. And then we are very, very diligent and busy during the first week of the COP, where we need to finalize most of the technical work before we pass it on to the COP presidents, which can take it at a higher level, which is usually the political level. This year, Marianne and I, we have a very challenging task, which is to finalize the 3 unresolved issues of the Paris rulebook. One is under the helm of Marianne. It is the issue of common timeframes, while I have 2 issues which we have been, so to speak, kicking the can since Paris, and those issues are Article 6 and transparency. And just to say that during this very challenging year, we've been going through with the pandemic and the lack of ability to meet formally. I think this type of meetings where we can engage on an informal basis and go beyond our usual red lines are very useful to really help us foster some solutions for the global good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marianne and Tosi. I think that again, let's get into a little bit of a conversation. You have lost a year. I mean, it is a year. Tell many of my friends that a year in somebody's life it maybe is not worth as much as a year in other people's life. Some have more, some have less. So it's been an important year for many of us, and we have worked very hard. But I think most people know those ones that are very much close to the UNFCCC negotiators, etc. But have there been progress that people have not seen? I mean, there have been a number of activities, we are aware of them, but I think maybe just give a flavor to many of that haven't been here, of the kind of engagement that you have started to promote through the subsidiary bodies. And also, it also be helpful if you want to talk a little bit about the kind of the year ahead. How do you profile that? There are clear concerns about a subsidiary body in May. There are some concerns about the COP itself, what some may say. So, we know that we don't have definitive answers, but just a little bit. Marianne, you want to start, and then Tosi, let's I'll leave it the two of you, how you play this. So Marianne, please.
Thank you very much. This is something that I think we could talk about for quite a number of hours. But let me try to distill a little bit what we saw coming forward in 2020, when we were in the position where we saw that this is a situation which is not blowing over in a month or two. We had to first postpone the SB52. We postponed it to October, made a plan for that. That plan had to be revised, obviously. But at the same time, at a very early stage, we were crystal clear, and all the things coming from parties were also crystal clear. Climate change is still important, and the urgency of climate action and climate ambition and working under the UNFCCC to support that does not go away even if we have a pandemic. So I think this was a beacon throughout the year that we need to continue to work. We cannot simply lose a year. So with that as our overarching frame, together with key guiding principles such as transparency, inclusiveness, I think that we managed quite a lot. We had 2 major events, the June Momentum, which was, the first stumbling, I think, steps of a very immature child with regard to how to do virtual engagements. We really was in a very unfamiliar territory. And we needed to find ways to accommodate a global participation, to accommodate all different views and parties, and also observers and non-party stakeholders, and to make sure that we preserve our agendas intact, that we manage to also find spaces where the informal exchanges, because there were no negotiations obviously taking place last year, but still we managed to progress on a number of key areas, and we did formal work. Now, we did not have formal negotiations, but we did indeed manage to carry out many of the key tasks that the UNCCC were supposed to do last year. Let me give you some examples. Now, the constituted bodies, the Adaptation Committee, the EXCOM under the Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage, the Standing Committee on Finance, the KCI, which supports response measures, the Paris Committee on Capacity Building, the Consultative Group of Experts, also supporting countries on capacity building for reporting, and the list goes on. They met. Even some of the newly established bodies under the Paris Agreement, the Compliance Committee, they met and established themselves in a year where we weren't able to meet in person. And they carried out their meetings and worked on their work plans, which they have been mandated to work on. And they have delivered reports for 2020 as per usual practice. The reports, and I have to say from an SBI perspective, one could imagine that parties would delay the reporting to the convention on the NatComs, on the binary reports, but they did not. We did not see a very strong disruption in reporting coming from parties. So parties worked, the UNCCC worked on a number of issues and meetings, and Tosi, I'm sure, will comment on this also, because he had a number of events under the SBSTA, which was carried out in 2020. And many of these were captured in the climate dialogues. Through the year, we had a lot of meetings with parties. There was meetings in the Bureau, which is, a body that's important in the UNCCC, taking many procedural decisions. And these kinds of meetings guided us continuously throughout the year, and enabled us to carry out the climate dialogues in a way that was very substantive. First of all, the number of issues that was on the table. We had 83 events covering 155 hours with 3,100 active participants and more than 8,100 engaging throughout the 2 weeks. We covered the breadth of the agendas. And I think that was very much different. Also, we also used very different kinds of mode of engagement, and I think that what we saw coming into the year, of course, where we anticipated a normal year, turning around, starting the baby steps and building the plane as we were flying, as Tosi usually say. And this enabled us by being very clear on anchoring things with parties. We had briefings with the observers. We managed to do a lot. So in 2020 for me was not a lost year. And by carrying out all that work, for example, we had more than 50 parties going through their multilateral assessment and facilitative sharing of views. That saves a lot of time and also it did reflect real progress. I want to say that for 2021, what was successful in 2020 is not enough to say that 2021 will be successful, because we need to be even more substantive. We need to get into a formal mode because we do need to deliver at COP26. So 2020 will have to continue and build upon what we were doing in 2020, but we have to do more. In the meeting we had with parties a couple of weeks ago, we gathered around what we called 3 shining stars: progress, transparency, and inclusivity. And under the continued uncertainties, we will have to deliver, and we will also have to deliver in circumstances where we do not exactly know when we can meet in person. So we have to find all avenues, all means to meet and to meet in ways that is indeed inclusive. And let me also say at this point in time that we really recognize many of the challenges that many face. One thing is connectivity, which is a clear challenge to many developing countries. And then we have the time zone issue, which parties independent of their status does face across the world. These are challenges that we need to take very seriously, and we need to address, because global participation and inclusiveness is a fundamental thing for our process to ensure legitimacy of what we are doing. So by that we have also something to as a backdrop for 2021. I'm not going to go too much into details for the agenda of the SBI this year, but I will say it is indeed packed. Of course, decisions were not taken last year, so many of the formal considerations that parties do in the negotiations, they were indeed not made. I will give you an example. Now, the constituted bodies, like the Adaptation Committee, for example, they did deliver an annual report, and they presented this annual report in the climate dialogues in November, December. However, the parties' formal consideration of the 2020 report will not be done until parties formally gather. So one thing is the work and the technical work that the constituted body was doing, and they presented that in their annual report as mandated, but how parties consider this report cannot be done until they have a formal session. So indeed, we have not only the report for 2020, but we have also the 2020 report, which needs to be then considered at the end of the year. This is just an example. For the Adaptation Committee, we also have the 2019 report, but that's another story. But it just one very small example, a very just illustrative, I think, of how, of course, delays in the formal engagement leads to a very substantive volume of work, and this goes throughout our agendas, both me and Tosi's agenda. And for me, I have also, of course, several reviews. Every now and then, and regularly, of course, the Climate Convention do review its work and program. And for me, there are under SBI 3 important reviews taking place this year. It is the action on climate empowerment, which is key to inclusiveness in work on climate, which have it needs to have a new work program, and will be under review this year. It is the least developed country expert group that supports the poorest and most vulnerable countries in their work on adaptation. They will have their review to strengthen this key arm in the process. Will be done this year. The Adaptation Fund will undergo a review. So these are examples under my agenda, which needs delivery, and parties need to come together to have this in a formal engagement. Now, prior to any formal engagement, we also need to utilize any time available to pursue preparatory work, to pursue technical work, in order to be as prepared as possible to the day when parties can have a formal engagement. As you have maybe noticed, I am not talking about the format. So the virtual, non-virtual format, or virtual versus in-person format, this is a discussion which is very, with our different views, I have to say, and that parties, I think, will need to stretch very far in any direction and be very innovative and creative in how they approach. And we need to make sure that we have many scenarios that we can deliver on from the SBI side. But certainly from a very sort of technical perspective, looking at the agenda of the SBI, my consideration and my assessment is very clear. If we are not able to have a formal negotiation, preferably in June, as scheduled, there is a quite high risk that the SBI will not be able to deliver according to all its mandates this year, because it's simply such a big agenda with so many issues and with such a substantive volume of work. So we need for the SBI part as much time as possible. So without saying anything about the format, this is the reality, that if we want to deliver on the SBI mandates this year, we need all the formal time we can have. So by that, I think I will say that I am always optimistic. Being in the UNCCC leave you no option. This is not a place for pessimistic people. So I believe that we will indeed deliver. I have seen what we managed to do last year, where we thought it was a lost year. It was not a lost year. And we managed to turn around, and some of the constituted bodies, looking at them and what they managed to do last year in such particular circumstances and the innovative approaches. Now look at this conversation. We are 186 people in this conversation from across the world. If this were in person in Brussels, maybe, would you be able to capture all these people together in a meeting like this? This is just a question, but I think there are also something that is interesting and important to note with regard to this format as well.
Thank you, Marianne,
so much.
Mike, over to you.
I don't know if Tosi still wanted to add something to that. I mean, this was very, very exhaustive and extremely, I think, a good description of the progress that has been made. Is there anything specifically to that, Tosi, that you'd like to add?
No, I agree with Marianne very much. We are in agreement with everything she said, and that's the thing. Marianne and I have been working hand in hand since we started our job, and usually we're very complementary to each other. We complement each other and we complement each other. But what I wanted to say is that, like Marianne, I'm optimistic. I always have the tendency to see a glass half full and not half empty. I just wanted also to quote a good friend of mine, Kishan Kumar Singh from Trinidad and Tobago. He always says that we can quarantine COVID, but we cannot quarantine climate change. The science is clear. Runaway climate change is a reality. So we need to see the circumstances which we are under and try as much as possible to be able to find ways to cope with the constraints and the limitations that we have, so that we can continue to maximize progress, minimize delays, and all that in the spirit of transparency and inclusiveness. Of course, there are specific issues I wanted to touch upon as regards the work of the SBSTA, and I'll try to go for the short version, because like Marianne said, those are issues we could be able to talk about for such a long time. I just want to say that Marianne and I are very much guided by parties, because this is a parties is a parties-led process. And Marianne and I last year received clear guidance by the Bureau of the COP, and we're able to achieve most of the mandated events that we had to achieve last year. On of course, the issues of Article 6 and transparencies, I was able to conduct a series of consultations, and those consultations made very clear the sense of urgency which we are under. When you look at Article 6, since the Katowice package, we've unfortunately have fallen 2 years behind, and we need to try to make some progress on those issues. And based on what I heard during the informal consultations I held, I heard a very loud clear for informal virtual discussions to take place on a regular basis. And I do plan to run a series of short experts meetings, particularly on unresolved issues under Article 6, in the lead up to the SBSTA sessions and to COP 26. And I will do so in full coordination with the presidencies. And the topics are to be identified. And I really hope that this group, which we are meeting with, the 190 plus people, will be able to provide some suggestions on what can be addressed during those informal discussions, so that we can arrive at a good package which will be balanced, so that we don't leave any issues behind. On transparency, I must say that the parties during my consultations also generally welcome the proposal to have informal discussions. And there was a good response on the consultations organized by the under the climate dialogues. And I do indeed also, in light of the volume and the technical complexity remaining, to continue to hold some informal discussions. But like Marianne has said, I think that we need to be creative, of course, continuing to operate under the rules of this multilateral regime that we are under, but we need to really try to find ways to make as much as progress as possible, because a single week in Glasgow will not be sufficient to finalize our work. So we need to see how we can best try to create more convergence among parties, so that we can find solutions on the outstanding issues. Thank you, Michael.
Tosi, let me go for one thing. I mean, we're playing ping pong here, but you said something important, because look, normally the agenda, you know, like as a negotiator, I chaired things in my life, and you always get this direction at the beginning of the session, say, guys, by Wednesday or Thursday, whatever it is, you got to have everything in. And then I don't know what, what the SBSTA chairs, the SBI chair tell the facilitator. In this case, it is 2 years worth of agenda in 1 week. It is a hell of a job. I mean, is this realistic? Is there prioritization that you have in mind? Is it, because, you know, I mean, if we are having a SB session between now and then, whether that is going to happen or not in person, or is going to happen virtual, but 2 weeks of SBSTA, 2 years of SBSTA in 1 week, it's a hell of most SBI and SBSTA in 1 week is a hell of a challenge, I think.
Yes, I agree with you, Andre. And the chair of the SBSTA doesn't have the panacea. He doesn't have the silver bullet to resolve everything. I don't have either also a crystal ball to know what will be the situation in June, if we'll be able to meet or not. The only thing I can hope for is for us collectively to be able to be pragmatic enough to find ways to keep the conversation going. Ideally, I would say, if we can have space to engage and make sure that we socialize with each other's position, then when we have an opportunity to meet formally, maybe we'll just be able to hit the ground running and finalize what we have at hand. But what is important is for parties to agree that we have a conversation that takes place. And I hope that during the next bureau, parties can make sure that the representatives on the bureau can provide us with the guidance on how that conversation is to take place. Because I'm cognizant of the fact that this is a party-driven process, and I would certainly not venture beyond the mandate that has been given to me. But under the circumstances, it is very hard to anticipate in the coming days an in-person meeting. So it really depends of what parties want. And I just said that a single week in Glasgow will not be sufficient. And also we need to remember that us as experts, we need to get our act together and do our work diligently. Because when we pass on the baton to our political masters, it needs to be something that provides as much clarity as possible. Because if we serve them a spaghetti bowl, which they are not able to untangle, unfortunately, they will make decisions which are not necessarily the best informed ones. And it may actually hinder the great effort we've done over the years. So let us not leave it all to our political masters. Let us as experts try to make as much progress as possible so that we can provide clear options which will make the decisions easy.
Mike.
That's a statement, Tosi. Here. Maybe I'll turn to Marianne. You mentioned before that there had been, a number of national communications, biennial reports, etc. And even though it's not strictly speaking an SB issue, I think some in the audience would be interested in your sense of how's the progress with nationally determined contributions. Obviously, we're expecting, a whole round of revised and updated NDCs. And one hears reports that some are coming in, but there's still a gap. What's your expectations for the next months? How far can we get until November?
Well, first of all, I will have to say very clearly that NDCs, while many of the supporting decisions on national determined contributions lie with the subsidiary bodies, including common time frame for NDCs, which is under the authority of the SBI, and it will be negotiated and landed at COP26. The national determined contribution submissions are indeed parties' responsibility and not negotiated per se. But I can still comment because, of course, national determined contribution is important to all aspects of the UNCCC process. And according to paragraph 24 and 23 and 24 and 25 of 1 CP21, I will be technical about this. It says very clearly that parties were to submit 9 to 12 months ahead of the relevant COP, which was 2021. No, sorry, 2020, updated on new NDCs. And while some parties have come forward, others are still working. And I think that at the end of the year, with the climate summit to celebrate the 5th anniversary of the Paris Agreement, which was initiated by the UK and Chile, and I think that there we saw several and much more contributions and NDCs coming forward. And this year we can only look forward to those who have already signaled that they will indeed send in a new NDC, and we know that, for example, the US is one of those, but this is not under the authority of the SBI chair, and of course will not be negotiated. But indeed, at COP26 there will be a lot of focus, and rightly so, on NDCs as the key instrument driving ambition and driving everything we do with regard to mitigation efforts under the climate convention in due course.
Andre, you're muted.
Yeah, I'm muted.
Yeah,
let me get back to Tosi. Let's get into where's the beef now, Tosi. Look, I think that many people here are conscious that in the end, with all due respect and how much we love you, you are chairs, you are not parties, and as such you have influence and you will maneuver as best as you can, but in the end it's not to you to make the deal, it's the parties that need to make a deal. I think hope everybody understands that. Nevertheless, having said this, people in critical moments start turning to the facilitator, to the chair, to the presidency. When you start running out of option in the room, that's what you do. Now, we had two, and there's a question also here on the chat. First the $100,000 question is, what are the chances of success of adapting the Article 6 at COP26? Is a very broad question. The more discreet question is, look, we had what you'd call two strikes. I think I've worked as hard as anybody else on Article 6, a deal. But in your estimation, to the degree that you can share this, again, because you're a chair and your situation is delicate, politically balanced, what is it this not happening? I mean, in the end, there's gotta be a reason, because people keep insisting that we've got 2-3 issues, and if we had another 24 hours, we'll do it. And we've been saying this for 2 years. So what is holding this thing up? What is really holding this thing up? Is it really a few issues, or there's a broader uneasiness, and these are just the visible ones, on kind of the rocks coming from under the water, but there's a lot more stuff underwater. What's your estimation on this, to the degree that you can comment on this?
Yes, Andre, I think that we are a bunch of people who are, I guess, driven by particular dynamics. I know that people have mentioned all the UN fora where they've been actively engaging in decision making virtually, but it seems like the complexity of our process here is has so many interlinkages that it's not easy to agree on engaging more virtually, and especially even when we are meeting in person, there are so many interlinkages, there are so many underlying issues, which makes it very complex. But that said, like I said, I'm like Marianne, an optimist, and I think that there is still a serious challenge as regards Article 6, because we haven't been able to complete the rules and modalities for the implementation of that important article. Yet, I think progress has been made, especially during the last COP25 in Madrid. I think that significant progress was made, although it was not made visible to the outside world because of this Rule 16 which we have. But I think that there have been substantive key issues which have seen progress, and I think we are close to resolution of some of those issues. And those are issues such as some of the accounting modalities, the contribution of Article 6 instruments to the funding of adaptation, and also something very important to some the parties, which is the transition of units and projects from the Kyoto Protocol to the Paris Agreement and probably other issues. And I think that as regards, for example, the outcome of the transition of the Kyoto to Paris should be linked to the outcome of the related negotiations on the future of CDM. And I have to take my SBSTA hat for a few seconds, because I always say that CDM for developing countries represented this hope to participate more to the global effort and build capacity and obtain transfer of technology. But unfortunately, CDM did not deliver for some of the developing countries. And yes, created, I guess, some reluctance when it comes to new market mechanisms, which are being developed under the Article 6. So, but that said, to keep a positive note, although it is still complicated and it remains challenging, I'm sure that with the commitment of all parties, we will be able to do our work, underpinned by the political will, which have helped us achieve the Paris Agreement. I'm sure that we'll be able to operationalize those cooperative approaches in 2020. And for that, we need to finalize our work in Glasgow. We have no choice. But that said, we are SB chairs, but we need to work closely with the current presidency, the incoming presidency, so that we are able to, we do not sleep on Article 6 another time, like we have in Madrid and in Katowice, because the world has been waiting too long for us to deliver. That's what I can say, Andre.
Tosi, let me take this one further, if I may. I know that maybe I'm losing a friend here by pressing you a bit, hopefully not. But you've got a situation, fairly complex situation, where you've got two fairly heavy files. One of them is Article 6, the other is transparency. And they're not, I mean, everything is related, nothing is agreed, and everything is agreed type of situation. But nevertheless, transparency is dependent to a large degree on Article 6 completing its mandate, because there are elements of transparency in Article 6, of Article 6 in transparency. So unless you get that one, it's we've seen in the past that this has gotten. So is this something that is being is this something that is being considered? I mean, how do you see this? Because they are both essential files.
I think, Andre, I'm from the African constituency, and moreover, I'm from an LDC. I think what's important for many developing countries, and I'm not taking a biased position here, is really not how much they'll be able to participate, but how much they will have facilitation to do so. And that will be possible through adequate support, capacity building, finance, technology transfer. And for example, it is also how will they be able to cope with the adverse effect of runaway climate change and have enough means for adaptation. So when it comes, for example, to share of proceeds, a political decision needs to be made, because us as experts, I think that we have provided all options possible. And if there is strong political will, so that people understand that when I provide adaptation funding, it doesn't hurt my interest, but it is a contribution to the collective, maybe something can be taken as a decision. And it may be one of the keys that once turned will be able to turn other keys, so that we create a positive momentum. And this issue of support also links to transparency, because you do have transparency of support. And I believe that when you look at all the reporting tables which developing countries will have to abide by, so that there is a clear show that they are delivering on what they have said that they will, if there can be also some type of support that can be provided in a very clear and transparent way, so that they have certainty that if they start endeavoring into climate action, there will be adequate support that will play as a relaying role so that they can do more. I think more people will be willing to come forward. But of course, I don't need to simplify things, because it goes beyond support. It is also about political will coming from developing countries, so that we can really do what's needed. We can really be doing what is ambitious, so that we can really deliver on the objective of the Paris Agreement, which, as we all know, is to keep temperature rise under 2 degrees by the end of the century, with the possibility of actually attaining 1.5 degrees.
Mike?
Thanks, Tosi. Marianne, back to you. I feel like we're already diving deep into specific technical questions and agenda items, but there's one thing that I wanted to maybe step back again. You mentioned the US, of course, and the fact that the US has announced an NDC, and I think the fact that a change of administration has happened, it has a huge impact, of course, on negotiations on climate. In fact, I think the US, I'm sitting in the US, so I'm allowed to say that is perfecting the game of binary climate diplomacy. It's largely absent for 4 years, back with a splash for the next 4. Anyhow, the new administration has made some interesting announcements. A leaders' climate summit in the first 100 days, reviving the major economies forum, perhaps even maintaining some sort of unilateral climate scorecard to track action by other countries, etc. And I'm just curious, how do you feel these things will affect the ongoing and very delicate negotiating process that's taken so many years to get on track? Is this going to be helpful? Do you think that there's risk? Have you already had outreach from the new administration to talk about some of these issues? It's a very speculative question, I guess, but still, I think you're as close as anybody to comment.
Well, thank you for that question, and I think this is an excellent opportunity to clarify some of the roles and responsibilities we have respectively in the climate process, because the UNCCC is a framework convention, and parties it's a party-driven process, and parties decide different mandates, and they make different decisions, and they make different agreements. Kyoto Protocol being one of them, the Paris Agreement being one of them, and there's a whole set of procedures, reporting lines, formal ways and ways of engagement. Tosi and I are bound with very clear mandates. We have, which is decided by parties, of course, and we serve the parties. And as Tosi mentioned, of course, we are very much in the hands and guided by parties. And this is the formal, and there's procedures for formal decision making and so forth. So everything is sort of settled within that UNCCC formal context, and which is, indeed coming forward with legally binding obligations for countries. Now, then there is a whole ocean of initiatives across sectors, across different actors at different levels, that of course is important for the political momentum and for parties to talk to each other. This is what they need to do. It's not a part of the formal process, but it is indeed important for all that work. And there is a numerous of such arenas. Every year there is a Petersburg dialogue, which Germany is initiator of. And there is several negotiators forum. Andre and you are conveners of informal spaces where parties and observers meet and discuss. But it's not a part of the formal process. So for me, it's a very clear distinction of roles, and it's all needed. Both the formal and those other processes that is around, like for example, reviving the MEF process, for example, would of course be a very valuable contribution, but it's not a part of the formal process, which is more SBI and SBSTA and COP matters, but it contributes. to lifting up issues, maybe come with key unlocking key issues, for example, when parties meet in informal spaces, is very important for the negotiations, of course.
Thank you. I think that we'll try to alternate a little bit now with some of the participants. Benito Muller, I have godlike powers, and I promoted you to panelist. I'm looking behind you. I can't see my picture on the wall behind you, but I hope that it's there somewhere. But Benito, you have the floor.
Thank you, Andre. I think you'll find you're probably in one of those pictures, but never mind. I just like to mention a third element, which is absolutely key in the Paris rulebook, which we still need to get onto. And that is what Marianne mentioned, namely the common timeframes. Kishan, mentioned by Tosi, and I wrote a little piece. I will send the link through the chat of what happens if we don't have common timeframes. And it'll have serious implications, including, for example, Article 6. It is very difficult to actually judge double counting happening or not if we don't have common sort of regular timeframes. So this thing, and I find that there's traction that this is going to happen in Glasgow, and I think it's just important to constantly reiterate it with the other two, with transparency and with Article 6, just so that everyone gets it in the narrative that this has to be delivered at Glasgow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Benito. Tosi, Marianne, who wants to pick this up? And again, I'm encouraging people to take the floor. I appreciate Benito being very to the point. So, Tosi, Marianne, you want to react to Benito's?
I'd like to take words, but I'd like to let Marianne start because it is an issue which is being managed under the SBI.
Thank you very much. The common timeframes indeed is under the authority of the subsidiary body for implementation, and is one of the important deliveries under the SBI in 2021. It is important that we solve this issue, having clarity on what to deliver when, so that there is synchronicity in the process is imperative. We had very good dialogues on this issue during the climate dialogues in December, and I think what we see that there are several sort of underlying issues and concerns that will need to be addressed, and parties are not that far away from each other. And let me also say that the Article 4 of the Paris Agreement is very clear that parties indeed every 5 years will communicate an NDC. And then this rhythm that have to be clarified is something that parties have given themselves mandate to do. They have not given themselves a timeline. But I think it's getting to a place where there is an increasing realization that this indeed needs to be landed, and it does have implication for key processes such as one thing is Article 6, the transparency system, but indeed also the global stocktake. So I think that we are coming to a place and time where parties are increasingly realizing the importance of the issue to the overall dynamics and well-functioning of the Paris Agreement, and that we will indeed be prepared to land the issue. Of course, what is important to say also is that it's very much a political issue, because your time frame is something that parliaments and cabinets in our countries are very engaged in and decides. So this has to be something that our politicians also need to get on the radar, to work with, and this is indeed something that that I'm sure that also the UK presidency has incoming presidency has raised at several occasions. So I think that's my comment. But Benito, of course, we totally agree on this. The importance of landing common timeframes and the centrality of this issue for the Paris Agreement.
Thank you, Marianne. Tosi, did you want to add something to this?
Yes, just to agree with Benito and Marianne, I think that there are no issues which are orphan. I think all issues are very important and have the same standing. I think that we've learned through the years that in these negotiations, nothing is agreed until everything has been agreed. So yeah, I totally agree with Marianne and Benito. Common timeframes, it's an important issue. I think that it is an issue that attests to the dynamic nature of the Paris Agreement, which is about a staircase where we need all to embark and try to come with iterative NDCs with no backsliding. And it is an issue which is highly political, like Marianne said, because it's about committing political will, it's about committing legislations, and you may put government in a situation where they inherit of a situation and a commitment that they did not commit to. So it is quite an important issue, and it is important that we are able also to resolve it. I just wanted to say that I slipped earlier. I said that I mentioned Rule 16, talking about Article 6, and it's actually Rule 16 was for transparency. Article 6, we did have an outcome. We did inherit from 3 different texts, which even adds up to the complexity, because we need to find from which one will start, if any, next time. But just to say once again that nothing has been resolved until everything else is resolved. And it is important to have balance. And the balance which Marianne and I are not necessarily able to provide through the agenda which we have received from parties. This is why we need to work closely with the presidencies, so that other issues which are under the direct helm of the presidencies can also get enough traction, so that together we have this global balance package.
Okay, thanks a lot. Quick question on something that somehow I started in my life in Article 6 in market, but late in life I ended up dealing with something which we spend a lot of time in Europe right now. It is adjustments at the border for carbon. And Marianne will certainly know this. I think Tosi, you know that Europe is looking at a border adjustment on carbon, and that is something that is likely to raise some heckles. And the question had been raised in the past, so that this is going to in some way resonate in UNFCCC, in COP6. I mean, people have already raised it in WTO, but it is something that will be brought up. Will it be brought up there? The second question is, I see Mohammed Dalakil asking the question, is there's been progress on the KCI, as he would like to know the impact on conducting physical meeting on the 6 years work plan, and how to ensure progress and advancement in the work plan activities of KCI. So this is a two-pronged question on response measure. It has been in the past, I know it on my own back, has been a difficult and a very, very convoluted question. With CBAM coming up and with the delay in the KCI, no matter that we've made progress, how do you see this displaying? I don't know who wants to start. This is, I'm not sure which one is more in love. I think Marianne has probably been more involved in this, if I know through my discussion with you over the years.
Well, thank you. With regard to, let me comment on the KCI, and there are also some other questions I've picked up as well that I can comment on a little bit on.
Please.
On the KCI, let me say that the KCI, of course, have their own procedures and rules of engagement, and that Tosi and I, we can encourage and motivate, but indeed we cannot decide what the KCI is doing to implement their work plan. The guidance that was given from the Bureau and parties, and hence parties in 2020, was very clear. The Bureau expected that the constituted bodies were to work according to their work plan, and that they also were to meet as scheduled, and also that they delivered their annual reports. Most constituted bodies, they met according to schedule, they worked according to their work plans, and they delivered their annual reports. Now, of course, not all were able to do that, and KCI was one of these bodies that didn't meet. They met once, but it did not meet as scheduled, and that was in their own decision they made themselves. Constituted bodies, they were very quick in turning around, finding new ways of working and adapting to the circumstances. I am confident that the KCI will find a way around to work on delivering on their work program. This is a very important part of the climate conversation, and the work program is indeed very comprehensive. So I have strong hopes and believe that the KCI will indeed work to make sure that this important issue is delivered on as well. With regard to the formal consideration of KCI work, that is of course something that will take place in a formal SB session. And again, I will not comment on the format for this, but just I think it also serves an example how important it is not to wait until COP26 in having formal exchanges as well, because this indeed will be important for the delivery of the SBs. Now, there's a couple of other questions. Let me quickly say that with regard to observers, I think one of the things that Tosi and I work very closely on, we work closely on all issues, but on the observers part, this is and non-party stakeholders, this is very key to us to make sure that we have a good dialogue, that we have a good information flow, that we are able to include in our work the observers and non-party stakeholders. So what we did from June Momentum to the climate dialogues was, for example, to engage the observers and non-party stakeholders in the consultations to plan the climate dialogues. And we made sure that from the 83 events during the climate dialogues, only about 10 was not open to observers. So the ratio is 73 to 10. With regard to being open. And I think what we have with regard to closed events for observers and non-party stakeholders, that would be those meetings which normally would not be open to observers and non-party stakeholders for sensitive issues that needs to be discussed. This is an intergovernmental process, but of course most of the events and many of the consultations that we had, for example, I had a consultation on ACE review, on the leg review, which of course were open to observers, and I'm very, very conscious and eager to include these important voices in our work. That is indeed imperative for our delivery as well. Now, with regard to the long-term strategies and LEDs, well, this and again, it's not a part of the mandates for the SBs, and it's not. This is an invitation that parties have to deliver LEDs and long-term strategies. For in 2020, many parties are underway or have already delivered long-term strategies, and how that will be captured, if it will be captured in any formal state, that would be up to parties. But there is no mandate. It is the NDCs that is the formal sort of anchoring of reporting and these things that will start to be reported on in 2024. So I think I have managed to capture some of the additional questions. The loss and damage, yes, indeed. Again, the loss and damage have very important mandates to deliver on from its work plan in the ExCom, but also from the many important mandates given from parties in the decision made in Madrid. Madrid was a very important year for strengthening the work under the Convention on issues related to loss and damage, including the setup of the Santiago network. Now, also on strengthening mobilization of financial support, the ExCom have a mandate to set up expert group on this, and they are now working diligently to deliver on that, and it is I think expected that this will of course be reported through their annual report that will be considered at COP26. So this is, I think, something that is indeed important issues that will continue to be delivered on according to mandates. Now there, yeah, I think I've. Please correct me if I've not captured all questions, because there we have loss and damage. Yes, and then Tosi, I will give the floor back to you.
Yeah, I think just a quick, MJ, you want to, I can read the question, or you can ask a question yourself, MJ.
Hi, hello everyone.
There we go.
I'm happy to ask the question myself, although I tried to flag it just for a little heads up, I suppose, in the chat. The basic question is this: it's an Article 6 question, and it has to do with a couple of unresolved issues. One of which is the percentage cancellation that will be applied to deliver an overall mitigation in global emissions. And the other issue is, of course, the percent for share proceeds. And Tosi, you've described a series of informal sessions or discussions that will allow an opportunity to advance some of the technical issues. And these, as to technical issues, I'm wondering if these are on your calendar as yet, because it would be beneficial to actually have a technical discussion of what different percentages would yield for additional abatement and for additional resources for adaptation, depending on how those two percentages run. So I just wondered if that's something that's on your calendar as something that we've sort of flagged as an ongoing need.
Tosi, and thanks, MJ. Tosi, do you want to kind of take this? And I think we're going to have to start wrapping up because we're happy to stay on. Not sure everybody that you probably have other things on your busy agenda, but we took this question from MJ because I think it represents a broad constituency.
Yes, thank you, MJ, for the questions. And those issues are very important. Share proceeds and OMG are very important issues. And I guess this is very much what I was expecting from this conversation, is to receive some suggestions from you. And really to be a little bit blunt and maybe share my thinking. I believe that I will need to try different things. I will need to have some informals on having only experts. I could explore the possibility of having discussions, inviting heads of delegations, which of course don't necessarily have the same expertise as regards the tiny little details, but could go a little bit beyond of what positions are. And maybe then I can also pass on the baton to the COP presidents, which has much more political capital than myself, and maybe allow them to engage on some informals on some more sensitive issues. So hopefully by having these 3 levels of engagement, maybe we'll be able to cover many of the issues which are important. I just wanted also to rebound quickly on the questions asked by Andre on border carbon, to just say that I haven't been sufficiently engaged on this issue, nor follow that discussions. And I think that I will need to see how it evolves so that I can come and make a more informed position. Also on the KCI, which is a very important issue for a lot of developing countries' constituency, if we're not able to provide some good guidance and answers regarding response measures, some parties may feel like the convention is not delivering for them. So it's important that we are able to also make necessary progress. But like Marianne said, constituted bodies for us are a little bit sovereign because they do have their co-chairs, they do have the rules of procedures. And what we can do is only encourage them as much as possible to try to make strides and cover work. And we've been very inspired by where some of them stood starting 2020 and the progress they've been able to make by the end of the year. And we certainly hope that this can serve as an inspiration and guide some of the work of some of the constituted bodies that have not been able to work as diligently as we would have hoped, knowing that also there will be at some point some opportunity for formal adoption of the work that they would have achieved. And on the issue of observers, very important, and Marianne underscored the willingness that we have to engage with the various constituencies, because for us it is very important to hear what the youth have to say, what farmers have to say, what the research and science community have to say, because what we do is guided by their objective findings, what the business community has to say, because, you know, I always say public money will not be sufficient to resolve this climate change conundrum. We need to loop in everybody, especially private sector. So the observer community is very important to us, and Marianne and I have been engaging. We've been trying as much as possible whenever we organize our events to make them open. Yet we need to recognize that this is a party-driven process, and we can only go to the extent where parties are feeling comfortable to engage, and we need to take that into account. Thank you.
Listen, I think we need to wrap up, but I'm going back to a question for Christina. I'm not sure which Christina, but I think I know one Christina in Norway. I think that's the same Christina we're thinking about Marianne, maybe not. But I'll ask this and then I'll pass it on to Michael, and I'll let you, the two of you, have the last word. Said the UNSG Secretary General recently requested that additional negotiation time should be made available. How will this be accommodated? And the invariable question, which probably will not draw an answer from you, is we are faced with the reality that a very improbable SBSTA, and with some percentages for a COP. What are you getting from parties in terms of virtual discussions? And I understand from what you're saying, I think Marianne or Tosi, I can't remember which one of you referred to an upcoming bureau, which seems to be a very critical element in this discussion. Let me pass it on to Michael, so to his, if he has any final things to say, and then we'll pass it on to the two of you to wrap up.
No, thank you. It was a fascinating discussion. I think the comments revealed also how informed the audience is, how quickly they zeroed in on the technical specifics. I share, I think, Andre's curiosity on your sense of whether or not, you know, you expressed optimism. You gave us sort of a glass half full vision. Work can continue, but we do need those formal negotiations. How high do you think are the chances of, in the end, you know, the world is looking to COP26, to Glasgow. That's what most people, of the public at least, perceive. How high are the chances that we will have a somewhat traditional COP26 in Glasgow this year? Is there a chance that it'll have to be moved? But, you know, it's very speculative. Thank you again for all your insights and sharing time. And back to you, Marianne and Tosi.
Yeah, Tosi, you want to start, and then Marianne will close. Tosi, any final remarks? If you wanna take us up on what we said, or you wanna ignore us, we'll understand.
You know, listen, I can only recognize the conversation that took place yesterday, and how the Secretary General did say that we will need to find time to engage virtually. And of course, parties will have to see how that can be done, because we heard loud and clear during the consultations held by the two presidencies on the 28th and 29th that some parties express a lot of concerns as regards connectivity, as regards different time zones. as regards enough space to be able to coordinate and prepare. And I certainly recognize the Secretary General instruction to all UN agencies around the planet to make offices and venues available to allow for countries to participate virtually in an efficient way. But I don't know whether that will give the degree of comfort required by parties. Like I said, we know that we don't have enough time. We know that we are under very, very tough constraints. So we need to find a way on how to make progress. And I hope that we are able to find the right formula and that what prevails at the end are those three lighting stars. I think that's what came out of the conversation during the presidency's consultations, which are progress, transparency, and inclusivity, all that in the spirit of friendship and solidarity. I think if those are remaining or driving forces, I think that we can come, we can go above many of the hurdles that we have, so that collectively we're able to make the progress necessary to make Glasgow a success. Thank you.
Marianne, you have the last word.
Thank you very much, and let me say that it is urgent to deliver. And in the UNCCC, in the formal negotiations, we deliver through formal decisions, and this needs to happen. And in order to get there, we will need to have some formal engagements. And I have said that for SBI, and I will continue to say that, that my assessment is that there is a need for formal engagement prior to COP26, and a SB session in June is indeed necessary to enable the SBI to deliver on its many mandates. And of course, these are not mandates taken out of the thin air. This is mandates that parties have given themselves. So this is indeed a party-driven process, and it is the responsibility of parties to deliver. But my message is very clear as a facilitator of this process, to say that the reality is that if we want to deliver on the mandates of parties in 2021, we will need to work formally prior to COP26. Parties are of different views with regard to the format in which such negotiations can take place. Now, Tosi is very right saying that some parties indeed are very skeptical and feel that it's not inclusive enough, and it doesn't give the good conditions for negotiations, having those being done virtually. Others feel that it is, and I think what joins all is that no one feel that that the virtual negotiation is the best way. I think everyone agrees that if we can avoid virtual meetings, that is the best. We indeed need to see each other's faces. We need to shake each other's hands. And we need to be in that place where we can exchange formally and informally in person. However, this is not an option as something we can choose at the moment. We have a situation globally which indeed constrains us, and we will have to make the best use of what we have. And in my final sort of, before I close completely, I will say one thing. When we stood in June last year, and we tried to see the June momentum and how we designed that during May and June, I have to say that if I stood in June and looked at what we made possible and what was possible to do in November, I would say no, it's not possible. So I think that time is also something that is not, it's not a static situation we are in. Things are evolving. First of all, we get more acquainted with the tools. Secondly, the tools gets better and better. And we have more and more experience to build upon so that we can ensure that we can facilitate meetings in virtual format. But of course, challenges will remain and we need to overcome them. And I think that is what I want to say, that it is not an easy question, and for certain virtual meeting is not ideal, but it is indeed the only thing we have. Patricia Espinosa once said, if you only have lemons, you need to make lemonade.
Well, then we will have lemonade, not orangeade. So we'll take it from here. Listen, thank you very much. I want to say that it's been fascinating. I think we have people that have raised their hand very late, and I apologize, I can't give them the floor at this point anymore. I think that in terms of the percentages of people retained on this call has been probably one of the highest that we had in our interview. So it was quite substantive, quite fascinating. We appreciate both Michael and myself for that you have taken the time to join us, and also the community at large is I'm sure grateful for the opportunity to hear your views. And hopefully we shall meet again, maybe after the summer session, and take it from there. Again, thank you very much to all. We shall make this will be available on our website. And again, it's very interesting discussion, and we wish you all the best. We are here at the Roundtable to contribute in whatever capacity we can, and we will continue to cooperate with you and the Secretariat and the Presidency. Thank you very much to all, and have a good rest of the week. Thank you.